So good morning and welcome to the Sunday celebration for the Center for Spiritual Living Space Coast. My name is Reverend Dr. Ron Fox, and I welcome you. And if there's anybody watching that has never been to a Center for Spiritual Living before, we believe there's one God, many paths to that God, and we're here to love, honor, and support you no matter what your divine path is. And the Center for Spiritual Living Space Coast is a safe haven for people of all beliefs and lifestyles. Whoever you are and wherever you find yourself on your journey of faith, you're welcome here. To begin this morning, Reverend Jenna Watkins is going to open us with a prayer, and then one of our congregants, Ed Powers, is going to do a spiritual reading for us. Oh my God.
So if everybody would like to maybe close their eyes, sink into their chair, just relaxing into this high holy moment. This moment where we give thanks for the awareness that we each have that there is one power, one presence, one life force that moves in and through all of life. It is a presence of love, of harmony, of joy, of good, of community and hope. It is that source that allows each and every one of us to live our lives so fully, so beautifully. We are grateful for the awareness of this presence in our life and our ability to use it. And we give thanks also for all that is good and wonderful and loving and kind in our lives today. And I give thanks for each and every person who's on this call, on this Zoom video, maybe looking at it later. I give thanks for your presence, for we each touch each other's lives in love and harmony, empowering each and every one of us to our greatest good. I especially give thanks to Reverend Dr. Ron Fox, for I know his heart always precedes him. It is a heart full of love, caring, kindness, and he opens himself up to receive the holy, holy moment flowing through him, allowing each thought, each idea, each word to be guided and directed so that each and every one of us receives a piece of wisdom to live our lives in a greater, loving, more compassionate, grateful way. And for all of this, I do give thanks, and so it is.
So it is.
I'd like to read something that I wrote. I call This Marvelous Adventure of Life. What you think about, you bring about. Said another way, consciousness moves energy into form. As I've said before, we live in our heads. Our life is an experience in consciousness, looking out through our form at the magic of our creations. Of all the energy, vibrations, and creations in the vastness of everything, we humans are the chosen few who have this amazing gift. We are the pinnacle of all creation, so incredibly blessed just to be able to experience life with consciousness. Every moment of life is beautiful, if and only if you perceive it that way. You know, it's actually possible to simulate problems and ugliness in the midst of living in the beautiful perfection of God. You get to live in form as you with your unique consciousness, which is amazing in itself because you are the only one of you ever in the entire cosmos. God wanted to experience the totally unique and exquisite nature of you moving energy into form. God needs you for this. Celebrate the magnificent and beautiful being you are now and this rare and precious life that you are experiencing as a most wonderful gift to God. Perceive it good. Celebrate everything. And even though all humans have it, consciousness is a mind-boggling experience that is so rare and fleeting throughout the universe that to live in the glory of life in form as we do is an extraordinary event, an unimaginable privilege that is bestowed upon us. Be grateful for and love every single moment of this marvelous adventure of life.
Thank you, Ed. So the title of the message this morning is Remembering to Give Thanks. And I want to begin with two quotes from with two quotes. The first one is from Joel Goldsmith, who wrote, "Gratitude, like love, is God expressing itself through man, as man." And Ernest Holmes wrote, "If we wish to come to the Spirit for healing of our wounds, let us come with peace and spontaneous joy, for the Spirit is joy. Let us come with thanksgiving also, for a thankful heart is in harmony with life." So I want to speak about Thanksgiving. And for me, one of the great writers on the idea of Thanksgiving and gratitude is Eric Butterworth. And he says to us that it really doesn't matter to God if we give thanks or not. God doesn't really care, but it might matter to us because giving thanks is an important state of consciousness. We give thanks not for things, but we give thanks from the consciousness that there is always enough. You know, when we read the Sermon on the Mount in the Bible, Jesus began his prayer by giving thanks. And he wasn't giving thanks because there was an adequate lunch. What he was doing, he was turning away from the appearance of lack because he knew there is always enough. And Butterworth makes the point, I think it's so important, that gratitude isn't a reactionary emotion, it's a causative energy. So we're not reacting necessarily when we have gratitude, but as we live a life of gratitude, we're causing it. And you don't need to be grateful for something. You only need the desire to feel grateful. Plato once wrote, "When you feel grateful, you become great and eventually attract great things." And you know, we can all find something to be grateful for. A loved one, children if we have children, friends, our health, life itself. Because when you live in a constant state of gratitude, your life becomes a constant living prayer. So Rabbi Byron Sherwin, the late Rabbi Byron Sherwin, in one of his books, he writes about gratitude, and he tells a story about the philosopher Goethe. And he says Goethe was in Italy, and he was visiting St. Peter's Square, and there were all kinds of blind beggars there with signs and with cups for people to donate money to them. And he said most of the people walked by most of the blind people, but there was one person that was getting a lot of attention. People were stopping and they were reading his sign, and they were donating to him. So Goethe walked over to see what his sign said. And here's what it said. It said, "It is springtime and the flowers and trees are in bloom, but I am blind." And Sherwin said, do we have to lose our sight in order to be grateful for the gift of sight? He asks, do we have to suffer a loss to appreciate what's precious to us? And he tells a story. I believe he lived in Chicago. He tells a story about a man who walks into an elementary school with a rifle and begins shooting. And he kills 3 fourth graders and wounds several other children. And one of the parents of a young girl who survived came to see Rabbi Sherwin, and he said to him, you know, I hug my kid a lot more than I used to. I never before realized how much I loved my daughter and how grateful I am that she is in my life, that she's a part of who I am. Unfortunately, it took a tragedy for me to realize what I should have known all along. We don't have to have a tragedy to realize how grateful we can be for all we have. Just think if whatever, a tornado, a hurricane, a fire, whatever, if you lost everything that you had, isn't that a great way to remember to appreciate everything that you do have? Sherry Huber, who's a spiritual writer, wrote, when you stop comparing what is right here and now with what you wish were, you can begin to enjoy what is. You know, it's easy to overlook what you have when you focus on what you want. So what are some ways that we can practice gratitude? Let me give you a couple of thoughts on that. First, we can create a gratitude journal. Just try it for a week. Every day, write down 5 things that you're grateful for that happened that day. And what you'll see is when you look for things to be grateful for, you open your eyes to how much you have. And just think, at the end of 7 days, you'll have written down 35 things that you're grateful for, some of which you might have overlooked. Another thing we can do, you can call or write a letter to somebody in your life who's always there for you. It could be your partner, it could be a coworker, it could be a friend, a family member, it could be anybody, but just thank them for the difference they make in your life. Wouldn't that be a great thing to do in this week of Thanksgiving? You can share some gratitude stories at mealtime. Go around and ask each person, or have each person tell you something that they're grateful for that happened to them right that day. We can thank people, go out of our way to thank people who give us service as we move along our daily life, like perhaps a cashier at the supermarket, or the mechanic who works on your car, or a server that takes care of you in a restaurant. There are so many opportunities we have to just say thank you and let people know that what they're doing contributes to your life and the comfort and ease that you have. You can start a bedtime routine that when you lie down to go to sleep at night, before you go to sleep, close your eyes and go through your day and recall and give thanks for things that happened to you that you're grateful for. You know, this week I read about a Ziggy cartoon that said you could complain because roses have thorns, or you could be grateful that thorns have roses. Elie Wiesel is a Nobel laureate, and he's a person who spent years in a concentration camp, seeing all the horror that goes on there. In fact, he watched his father die in the concentration camp. And I want to read something that he wrote. He said, "No one is as capable of gratitude as one who has emerged from the kingdom of night. We know that every moment is a moment of grace, every hour an offering. Not to share them would betray them. Our lives no longer belong to us alone. They belong to all those who need us desperately." And that is why I swore to never to be silent whenever and wherever human beings endure suffering and humiliation. We must always take sides. Neutrality helps the oppressor, never the victim. Silence encourages the tormentor, never the tormented. How fortunate you and I are that we don't live in the kingdom of night that he was talking about. That every day we have so much to be grateful for. You know, we look up, we can see the sun, the moon, we can see a sunset, mountains, the ocean, the stars. We are blessed, and all we need to do is to remember that. So I think one of the ways that we could look back and see and believe how blessed and how grateful we can be is having a near-death experience, because it calls it to us. It's right there in our face. And I've talked about this before, but in 2008, I had a pulmonary embolism. And I remember being in the ER and lying on the litter. And initially, to be honest, I thought it was a joke because I had been sick, but I was feeling better. So I didn't grasp the seriousness of the entire thing until they came in and they were starting to explain what it was. And for a while, Becky and I were there alone. And a song, I realized I could die. I realized I might never, ever, this is the thought I had, I might never go home again. And a song came into my head, a Garth Brooks song, "If Tomorrow Never Comes." And he writes this song to his wife, but I'm going to give you some of the lyrics, but it doesn't have to be a spouse. It could be anybody that we love and that we care about and who makes a difference in the quality of our life. So here are just a couple of the lyrics from this song. And the point behind it is, what happens if he goes to sleep and doesn't wake up? And so he looks at his wife and he says, "If tomorrow never comes, will she know how much I loved her?" And he goes on in the song, towards the middle, he says, "I've lost loved ones in my life who never knew how much I loved them. And now I live with those regrets. So I made a promise to myself to say each day how much she means to me. So tell that someone that you love just what you're thinking of if tomorrow never comes. So I want to close with a story that Rachel Remen talks about in one of her books. And she's a doctor, and she says she was at a workshop of physicians, and it was about listening, a listening workshop. And one of the exercises they did, they had all of the doctors take out their stethoscopes and listen to their own hearts. And she said at first, you could tell that they were a little nervous because they didn't want to hear anything bad going on there. But then eventually, she said it got totally quiet. And you could tell they were awed because some of them maybe had never done that before. They listened to other people's hearts, but they hadn't taken the time to listen to their own. And they were deeply moved. I'm sure they talked about this after this exercise. They were deeply moved how close they are to life and the importance of their heart. And then one of the doctors stood up and he said, how could we be so close to something so holy and not know it? And he recited this prayer, which I will close with. Days pass and the years vanish, and we walk sightless among miracles. Lord, fill our eyes with seeing and our minds with knowing. Let there be moments when your presence, like lightning, illumines the darkness in which we walk. Help us to see wherever we gaze that the bush burns unconsumed, and we, clay touched by God, will reach out for holiness and exclaim in wonder, how filled with awe is this place, and we did not know it. God bless you. Thank you for being here, and have an awesome Thanksgiving.